Thanks for joining us on the NRT Now podcast, part of the largest Christian music site online, newreleasetoday.com. Sit back and relax as we chat with your favorite artists, introduce you to new artists, and more. Now here's your host, Jake.
We're here with Jeff Allen, a late addition to our We Love Awards show. We're just so glad to have you here, Jeff.
I'm glad to be here. I was, where was I? In Florida when I got the email. So I'm here. Yeah.
That's amazing. You were in Florida yesterday, and you drove from Memphis this morning.
Right.
Or from Nashville this morning.
I live in Nashville, so it was and then through the rain, my gosh, it was a terrible rainstorm.
So the day of the show, apparently weather is a thing for these. Last year, it was right at the tail end of the ice storm that rolled through Nashville.
Oh, wow.
And where we're at here at Visible Music College, the whole basement was flooded. There was no running water. I mean, I'm sure there's a bucket to go to the bathroom in somewhere, right. Or a water bottle. I'm not sure which.
Well, I'm glad it's not that bad now. So, but the rain was sort of biblical. I was looking for the frogs, you know.
I don't know if you've seen like the old Bond shows where they have those cars that drive into the water and are submarines and all that. I'm pretty sure that there's a couple people that came by boat this morning, just not intentionally, but here we are.
The I-40 was packed with trucks and rain.
Well, I'd like to hear a little bit about who you are. I know you've been a comedian for a little while now.
Since 1978.
I wasn't going to name dates.
Well, that's fine. I'm old. People will see that. They won't see it on this, obviously, but
if they watch the award show, they might
will.
See it.
They will see how old I am.
I just want to hear a little bit more about who Jeff Allen is, and obviously you tell a lot of your life in your comedy. You've been married for a while. Yeah. Can you just talk about kind of your journey to getting to Jeff Allen, the comedian that we watch on YouTube and roll over laughing and waking our spouses up at night?
Yeah, I started at 22 and in Chicago, and I got married at 30. That changed everything. It was interesting. I told my son lost his job a few years ago, and he came in and he said, I'm really scared. You know, I lost my job. And I said, well, that's a good thing that you're scared. And I said, just so you know, our DNA is wired for panic. So I got married. I married a woman who had a 2-year-old. So when we got married, he was 3, and then she got pregnant a couple months before the wedding, because that's the way we do things. So I went from single and traveling 50 weeks a year with really no responsibility. I had a mattress on a floor in L.A. to married and 2 kids living in Boston. And I actually had to get a bed where the mattress was off the floor because that's what she wanted. And I got thrown into adulthood. So when I hear millennials talking about adulting, I get it. I didn't start adulting till I was in my 30s. Anyway, I literally doubled my income in 1 year from being married, just out of panic. I just got on the phone and started working it. And I was doing predominantly clubs. When I started in 78, there weren't a lot of clubs. By 1980, the clubs exploded. You could work without any skill, really, and I didn't have any. I was able to travel around emceeing and then work my way up to middle and then eventually headlining comedy clubs. And that worked out really well. But I was an alcoholic and a drug addict at the time, and I got married, and it took me 9 months to figure out that wasn't going to work. So I got into recovery almost a year in. Matter of fact, my last date using, I got sober on July 6th, I think, and then I used on September 27th because my date's the 28th in Memphis. I was in Memphis. And an old coke buddy of mine showed up, and I couldn't resist. I was, 2 or 3 months and really knuckling it anyway. So anyway, I went out and I was standing in front of Graceland at 3 a.m. screaming for the king, because I was hoping some guard came out and says, we know you love Elvis, but you can't be out here. I go, I was just wondering if you left any Valium under the bushes because I'm a little trashed. So they threatened to arrest me. And anyway, I went back to my room. And this is when I really began to believe that there was something outside of me. I didn't believe in God. But I had met a guy in August in Boston. He had given me his phone number, and I threw it in my wallet. He was in the program, and he said, look, anytime you're on the road and you feel like you need a drink, give me a call, no matter what time. I don't care. So anyway, I got back to my room that night, and it was about 3 a.m, and I'm chopping up whatever cocaine I had left, and his number fell off my driver's license and laid there. And I started looking at it and just came to the reason, I don't want to do this anymore. So anyway, I called him up, and he says, do you have any cocaine left? I said, yeah, about 1.5 grams. And he said, well, if you're serious, you'll flush it. So anyway, I went to the bathroom. I flushed the cocaine. I came back, and he says, did you do it? Did you flush it? I said, I did. He goes, really? You're the first? Are you kidding me? You really flushed it? And I said, I did. He goes, well, then you're serious? You're not suicidal? I go, no, I'm just sick and tired of this. When I started hearing about there are no coincidences, I kind of went back to this moment. That wasn't a coincidence that number fell out at the time it fell out. And I've been sober since, 34 years. Our marriage came near divorce, and 10 minutes from the divorce court. And what started as a 12-step journey just to stay sober became more of a search for meaning and purpose. I tried Buddhism, I tried New Age, I tried all this other stuff, and met a guy who put the Bible in my hands. My first sermon I ever heard was on Ecclesiastes. When it started out, meaningless, meaningless, that kind of summed up what I came to, those conclusions. I was a nihilist by the time I was ready to hear the message of Christ.
Wow.
She was leaving me, and everything I tried. So when I heard a sermon that said, life without God will have no meaning, without meaning to your life, there's no purpose, without purpose, you might as well commit suicide. That resonated with me because my wife would look at me and go, I get the impression you don't care we're losing the house. And I go, I don't. She goes, well, who says that? I go, I'm being honest. I want to care. You think I don't? I don't want to care. I just don't care. Because what difference does it make? If we live in a ghetto, we live in a mansion, doesn't mean anything to me. I don't get it. I don't understand it, why I should care. It was a transformation overnight when I said to Christ, okay, I'm yours. I don't know what this means. I really don't. I read enough about his life in the Bible and his claims. So I said, if they're true, then show me, I'm yours. It was overnight. Just a lightness of being. It was like, I remember waking up the next day. I was in Arlington, Texas. I had my 2 kids. She was in Ohio. And I was traveling with the kids that summer before school. I had a month. I took them for a month. I remember sitting on the end of my bed. They were in the other room watching cartoons. And all of a sudden, I just said, something's different. Wow, I feel amazing.
Well, that's just because you're in Texas.
That's it.
That's half of it right there.
That's it. That's what they said.
See, I live in Arlington, Texas, so I get it.
Oh, okay. So then Spellbinders. That's where it was. It was the club I was working. But anyway, that was, and I remember, just thinking, is this what this is, this relationship thing?
That's incredible. And when you see Jeff Allen on YouTube or any of the specials that happen and all that, we see funny Jeff Allen.
Right.
And to be honest, when we started this, I was not expecting that, which is, it's an amazing testimony. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, well, you want to know who I was. That's kind of where what you see today was the genesis of it. Prior to that, I was just an angry, bitter, jaded, cynical, foul-mouthed human being that spewed whatever bile would start inside of me, I would puke it out. So I've always kind of worked inside out. I've used the stage to work out my neuroses. And I feel sorry anybody who saw me for those years. I apologize. But my wife would look at some of the stuff I did when I talked about her. She'd leave in tears. You must hate me. And I go, I don't hate you. That's just jokes. But they were vicious. I was angry.
I think it just kind of goes to, what we see, whether it be on stage, in a special or an artist on stage singing, there's a lot of times just so much life that happens behind the scenes.
Oh, absolutely.
That gets to that point.
Right.
Like I said, I was watching a little bit of, I can't remember which special it was last night, just quick Jeff Allen on YouTube.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious.
Thank you.
I do apologize that you haven't been right in 30 some odd years, but this is a safe space here. Since you've been married, I get it. I've been married for 16 years now.
Yeah.
And so I get it, but we're guys here. This is a safe space. We can be right for just a minute here.
Right. Absolutely. And happy. Yeah, we were on a marriage cruise last week for a Family Life Ministries, and second or third night we got into a huge fight. Huge, where I walked out of the room and come back. I finally walked back and looked at her and I go, this is demonic. She goes, it's you. I go, you're right, I get it, And I just not reacted. then everything would have been fine. Just let her say her piece. But after 35 years, we kind of took a day, we put it behind us and finished the cruise strong. So we had 2 great days, 2 crappy days, and 3 really wonderful days. So,
well, I mean, it just isn't that marriage. Like, and that's one of the things that I've learned over, I mean, like I said, I'm about halfway between you and newlywed. And I mean, just learning how to fight and how to find the humor in that.
That is everything. Anybody can go along and get along. You know what, Scott Peck, this is one of the things that helped change my marriage, or change certainly the trajectory of how I looked at things. In his book, Road Less Traveled, he said, true love cannot begin. It doesn't even begin until conflict enters the relationship. Yeah. In other words, you can't have a loving relationship without conflict. It doesn't exist. And as I was old enough to know, every relationship I had prior to my wife ended when conflict entered. I hated conflict. In my home growing up, there was no conflict resolution. It was, if you disagreed with Dad, he'd throw you against the wall. That'd be the end of the discussion. So you just learned to, like I did, to avoid it. So when you get married, you can't avoid it. I used to say on stage, I hated conflict, and God gave me a woman who loved it. So, I'd leave a room, and she'd be right on my heels. I'd tell her, just give me 5 minutes to go come, because my head is swimming right now. So, yeah, how you fight will determine the depth that you can go. I just heard something the other day. Somebody told me, we were talking about this same thing, and they said they had to go to a counselor to learn how to argue. I said, we did that, but it didn't take. But he told me, the husband said that, yeah, in the middle of the argument, if it gets out of hand, which it does, she stops and says, tell me 3 things you love about me right now. And I said, and you do that. You can do that? He goes, takes a minute. I told Tammy about it last night. She goes, never work for us. Never work, because you're such an a-hole. And I go, you're right. And it's funny. That's when we were talking about politics in our home. We never agree. But anyway, she wouldn't vote for Trump because of that. He's an a-hole. Yeah. And I said, it makes me think how many times you've called me that over the years. And she says, well, it's different with you. I go, so you'll sleep with one, but you won't vote for one. So, not the same thing. So I said, okay. I guess there's different levels of that when you look at it.
I didn't mean for this to go to a marriage counseling session, but I mean, the thing that's great about marriage is there's just so much comedy gold that comes from that too. My wife is going to absolutely love that I tell the story. We're on our first cruise, our first week away from kid, all that. We're just having an absolute time, just having time of our life. And as we're going through there, we're sitting out, we're on our balcony. We got a balcony room. We splurged. And she asked me, how far above sea level are we? I look over the edge and about 100 feet, give or take.
Yeah.
And she looks at it, the realization of what happened just washed over her face. And it's like, okay. And she just shut up, walk away.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. I didn't even think of that. When you said that, I didn't put it together that you were on a cruise and you were just above sea level right there. Yeah.
Yeah, just we're 13 decks high or something like that. And
is she having trouble breathing? Is that why she wanted to know?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. I'll forget. I'll get to Colorado Springs or Denver, and you can't keep up with enough water. And I'll just go, why am I so dry? I can't. And then you realize you're a mile up.
Yeah. But yeah, just that relationship that comes being married long enough and just being around somebody between the conflict and all that, there's something special that comes out of that the joy, the happiness, and just all the comedy gold that happens with that can't happen unless you have that good relationship.
Well, that's it. I used to tell churches, when I first started working churches, they'd go, boy, you really hit your wife pretty hard. And I go, well, I could stand up here for half an hour and I could tell you what I love about her. And you'd think that was really nice, but you wouldn't laugh a whole lot. The laughter comes from coming out of the pain. What did Woody Allen say? Comedy was tragedy plus time.
Yeah.
You get time to heal from those things, then the humor will come. I mean, it has to. I mean, the folly of, and that's why I'm so more devoted to my wife now than I was 35 years ago. She knows me. That means something. Because Tammy's asked, do people hit on you after the show? I go, well, if they hit on me after my show, they're the Jezebel. They are classic demonic Jezebels because it's all about you. But let's just say I get hit on. When I throw away that for one night. And that's one of the things the 12-step program taught me, was to think through your decisions and choices. You know, you can drink, because I was whining about not being able to drink early in my sobriety, and my sponsor at the time goes, who's going to stop you? You're a big boy. You're in a bar every night. I was working clubs. Who's going to stop you? But just think it through. What's going to cost you? And it doesn't take long. You know, I knew where I was and how close I came to losing her and the kids and everything. So it was an easy fix. It was just, it's not worth it. It isn't. The cost, it's not the $4. It's all the other consequences, you know, and the loss of life, that never fazed me. But the loss of her and the kids and everything. So we live in a culture today that's all about being seen, but not really being known.
Yeah.
You know, it's about Instagram and how many likes. Those people don't know you. I always tell churches, if you followed me around for a week, you wouldn't think there was anything specially spiritual. But you didn't know me when my nose was bleeding from the coke and I was breaking stuff every other day in the house. But she stayed, you know, she did. She knows me. And I trust her instincts. We're putting together a show on all of that right now, a theatrical show. And I'm working with another guy out of L.A. And matter of fact, we're doing our first table read tomorrow night at the house with, you know, I invited about 15 people over, and we're going to do a table read of the show. It's hard putting this together. I mean, rehashing the kind of man I was, you know, and that was what the cause of the fight was on the cruise. I was doing testimony for the marriage cruise, and I overstated how bad I was, and she got upset because it reflected on her. And I didn't realize it when I got back to the room, and then we got in this big argument. And the next day I started thinking about it. I could see why she would be upset.
And so transitioning a little bit into kind of the Christian space, I mean, that's another space, talking about marriage and that time and all that, and the comedy that comes from that. But, you know, kind of stepping into the church, you know, just all the funny stuff that Christians do that we think that we believe. I mean, this is not just unique to one denomination, or, I mean...
Yeah, I don't even know that. When I started, I knew nothing about denominations or anything. And so I didn't do any satire. I still don't really, because to do good satire, you got to know whose toes the sacred cows you're booting over. And I don't really know where they're at. And if you're not purposefully attacking sacred cows, then you're dangerous, because you'll hurt people inadvertently. You know, at least know why and what you're saying and whose toes you're stepping on. You know, Mark Lowry, a comic, told me once, he said, find the line and then kick it, you know. And, you know, I pushed it when I first started in the churches. You know, I really toned it down. And then gradually over the years, I've tried to find where the line is. And I pretty much do the same thing in the Improv in Tampa that I do at a Baptist church. I don't change anything now. I really don't.
I think it kind of comes back to when we take ourselves too seriously,
right? You
know, whether it's as a Christian, as a husband, as a father, whatever. I mean, we lose sight of just the goofy stuff that we do. You know, I look back at some of the stuff that I thought about or I did or whatever. Right. I mean, it's like just sometimes not goofy in the best of ways, but like, did I really say that? Did I really?
Right.
You know, like if you start taking yourself too seriously, no matter what the circumstance is, I think it just grates on you, and just being able to get above that and say, like, you know what? I'm a dork. Like, I was stupid.
Well, you know, it's funny. Yeah, as you say that, what popped into my head was a guy like Stephen Colbert. All of a sudden, he got to be a host of a network television show, and he started taking himself seriously. He was brilliant on Comedy Central. And then gradually over time, he's just become a boring old cliche. And it's a shame, because he was a brilliant comic. And he just started taking himself too seriously. And I think you're right. I mean, I do a whole thing in my show now about I do a routine of, anyway, it's a long, but it could cause a problem, because it's about waterboarding and dripping water on people's faces and things. And I think it's nonsense. But anyway, I got an email from a guy, and it was a 3-page letter on why waterboarding was not a viable method. And I tell the audience, I sent him back a short reply, you know, after reading the 3 pages. I said, you know, I don't care. And I don't. I'm a comic. I mean, my God. I mean, I don't know who gives comics the power that they give them. I mean, they hear something and then they want to ruin their lives because they said that. It's not like the State Department is cruising YouTube and the comedy channels and going, we never looked at that issue that way. Let's call the guy in for a consult. I don't care. I mean, I honestly don't. It's just let it go. You want to laugh, laugh, don't laugh. I don't care. I really don't. But don't destroy my life because you don't like what I say. Again, down the line of taking things a lot more serious than they need to be taken. I always tell corporate shows when I walk out, first words out of my mouth, you learn anything from me. I'm not a speaker. Speakers mean you might learn something. If you learn anything, you misunderstood it because I'm fluff. I'm an hour distraction in your life, and hopefully you laugh because it releases endorphins. And when you walk out of my show, I want you hurting. I want you to have laughed so hard, you just go, man, for an hour I didn't think about. And I had a lady come over to me at the Improv in Tampa with her husband. They were on her way to their funeral of their best friend.
Oh, man.
And they're my age. They're 70. They understand that this is all a part of life. It's the natural passing. It hurts. But they're also believers, and they believe their friend's in a better place. But for an hour and a half, they wanted to stop at a comedy club and just laugh and remember their friend. And they were getting teared up telling me, this is our best friend, and we're on our way to say goodbye to him. So we just wanted to stop here. It was a 4 o'clock show on a Saturday. So anyway, that's kind of the way I want the rest of my, I get it. I mean, I get enough emails from people, especially during COVID.
Oh my gosh.
You got us through COVID. Thank you. Thank you. Every day I hear my wife, and I had a guy come over to me after a show, probably 2 months after everything started opening up again. I was at a club, and he said, it's the first time I heard my wife laugh in a year.
And
just this whole pandemic is just, everything in my life from here will be, it used to be pre-drinking, quitting drinking, and after quitting. And now it's pre-COVID, post-COVID.
Man, and isn't that the case? I mean, we all just went insane for a year and a half with COVID, with, everything. I mean, we could do a deep dive and tell jokes about all sorts of stuff, but
right.
It just kind of comes back to that. I think God gave us laughter. God gave us humor, these circumstances, and the ability to laugh about things after the fact, just as therapy to get that out of our head, to just lighten our moods to.
And a lot of Christians don't get that. When I started with Gaither years ago, Bill told me, I didn't even know who he was. Somebody saw me, introduced me. We had lunch. I came home and told my wife, I think I just had lunch with the Elton John of gospel music. This guy's like, at that time, we looked him up. He had 5 of the top 10 selling music videos in all overall genre. He was outselling Mariah Carey. So it was like, holy cow, who is this guy? So anyway, I go to this first event. He gets me off to the side. He says, look, a third of my audience, and there were like 15,000 people. He says, a third of them will laugh at whatever you do. Another third may not quite understand what you're talking about, but because they're there to have a good time, they'll follow the other third and laugh. I have a third of my people who have never been given permission to laugh their entire life. They've been told this walk with Christ while you're on earth is something you endure until you get to heaven, and then the joy happens. He said, if you can make them laugh, we'll have a long relationship. And that night I did, 10 or 15 minutes. And anyway, he walks up, while they're applauding, he puts his arm around me and says in my ear, he goes, you got them all, man, all the way to the back wall. Thank you.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And it means something to him because he wants everybody to be brought into the good time. So, but I've never forgotten that. As I started working in churches more and more, I started to see that there were people who just were never given permission. Life is it's an endurance race. You just hang in there, and I want to scream. You got the keys. I know what nihilism is. I lived it. I know it, and I know what the joy of being free to realize that, look, I'm not the one in charge down here. I'm really not.
And the Bible talks a lot about you don't have to be poor. You don't have to be this. You can enjoy life here on earth. It's just about the, excesses.
And there will be trials and tribulations. So, to
borrow your wife's vernacular, don't be an a-hole.
Exactly.
I think we've come full circle.
I think we have. Circle back. Bottom line, I'm still an a-hole. That could be the title of the cat. Jeff's an a-hole. So
I think that'll work.
Yeah, that'll draw people in.
So I'm going to be like the total dork. I know you hate hearing this, but be funny. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know jokes.
I don't remember who I was hearing, but like the one thing that comics absolutely hate hearing is, "Hey, funny man, say something funny."
Well, yeah, I used to say that they needed a class on DJs and Christian radio. They didn't know how to interview comedians because it was always, "Hey, Jeff, give us a zinger," or something like that, And I'd go, it has to sound at least conversational. Now, Brian, I just lost. I had my train of thought. DJ in Nashville. He was the best. He had a beautiful laugh, and he laughed at everything. And he knew how to lead you into a conversation that you could do, a story about your marriage or whatever. Brian Mason. And I said, you should teach a class at the GMAs on how to interview a comedian. He'd interject clips and things, So it was a fun thing, and a lot of them, just like you said, just go, "Oh, well, be funny," and it's an awkward, and okay, Today's interview was funny. My wife has never been privy to certainly any of the interviews. I normally go to my office in the basement. Well, we couldn't get Wi-Fi. So it's really bad in the basement. So I just stayed in the kitchen. So she was there while I did this interview this morning for a morning show in Dayton. Anyway, we finished, and she goes, "He really didn't quite understand what you do, does he? He has no clue." I said, "No, he's probably 28 years old and interviews local cooks all in the morning and restaurateurs, but very few artists."
Well, and I just really appreciate this conversation that we've had. I appreciate you really being open and sharing your testimony. And I think we got a few laughs in there.
I hope so. And not, if they can go to my website, I got all kinds of stuff on there. And, they can go to YouTube and to the YouTube. And,
the
YouTube. And I have that.
I think you're aging yourself a little bit there. I think there's a certain age when you go YouTube or the YouTube. Like
the YouTube. We call it the Google at home. When my wife goes on to Google to check on my health. That's what she goes. That little thing you got with your eyeball. She goes, "Isn't that good?"
Oh man. Well, we just appreciate you hanging out with us for a while, Jeff.
Well, thank you, man, for having me. This is good.
Thanks for hanging out with us for this episode of the NRT Now podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And special thanks to Neon Feather for providing our theme music. Make sure to check out newreleasetoday.com and our socials for more great content. See you next episode.